You are the clay. God is the potter. And so a heart that will not obey cannot be molded and shaped. So what does God do? He just tosses it aside. Okay? He doesn't use you. I didn't say you couldn't be religious. I didn't say you couldn't go to church 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. I'm just saying God's not using you. That's all I'm saying. A heart that will not obey, that heart cannot be molded and shaped by God. God never gives His Spirit to a disobedient heart. I'm not saying you got to be perfect. I'm not saying you got to obey everything. I'm saying you got to be willing. Big difference between perfect and willing. You have to be willing. You have to say with brutal honesty, God, I really don't want to do that, but I see that you're right, and I'm willing. Man, that's powerful. If you can practice that kind of brutal honesty, you know, Lord, I really don't want to do that. I'm really not crazy about giving up my sin, but I see that it's right, and I see that you're right, and I'm willing. That's all you got to do. Willing. Willing, okay? You know, when a person says to God, well, God, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm not willing to give it up. I'm not willing to give up my anger, my pornography, my lust, whatever it may be. So I'm going to believe a lie. I'm going to choose a church, and they are on every street corner. I'm going to choose a church that says the law's been abolished. Repentance is just a one-time decision, and it's been nailed to the cross, and you don't have to do anything. I'm going to believe in a church that has a lawless theology. And I'm telling you, they're on every street corner. Just raise your hand, give your heart to the Lord, and don't think about it. Yeah, they're on every street corner. You know, and God comes along and says, look, you can be religious. You can go to church 6 days a week and twice on Sunday, but I'm not going to give you my Spirit. I'm not going to give you my Spirit until you are willing, until you have a willing heart to do what I say to do. Until then, we're not going to talk. But when you're ready to talk, come back. When your heart is right, come back to me and we'll talk. What does it take to receive the Spirit of God? Well, Matthew 22 and verse 14 says, for many are called, but few are chosen. You have to be called and chosen to a life of repentance. I didn't say called to go to church. I didn't say endless religious activity. I'm talking about you're called to become a different person. You have to be called by God. I'm telling you, if you listen to this program on a regular basis, if you're even willing, because a lot are not, if you're even willing to listen to this program, consider the fact that God may be calling you. Consider that. Order the material, by the way. 2 Peter 1 and verse 3. According as His divine power has given unto us all things that pertain unto life and goodness, through the knowledge of Him that has called us to glory and virtue. You've been called to glory, which is a powerful concept. Continuing on in verse 4, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these things you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. How do we partake? You see, that's what your calling is all about, to be a partaker of the divine nature. But how does that occur? Well, it only occurs by receiving the Spirit of God. And that is by receiving, by your spirit, the Spirit in man, you're incomplete the way you are now, receiving the Spirit of God, which makes you whole, complete. You begin the process of escaping the corruption that is in the world through lust. And it is a process, and that's a process, and it can be a painful process. But that begins the process when you receive the Spirit of God.